Quiet on set. Picture is up. All right, roll sound.
Rolling.
Roll cameras.
Cam's rolling.
And 3, 2.
Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome to Hank's Think Tank. I know it's been a while, but I've been busy. There's a lot going on. Good news is I've got Ritch Wheeler in here today, and he is a candidate for commissioner's race in Precinct 3. This is a really important race. It's actually one of the many important races that are going on this round. And we're just going to talk about, what his politics are and a little bit about the man himself, a little bit about Precinct 3, and maybe even Commissioner's Court. Welcome aboard. Rich, how you doing today?
Thanks. Doing great, Hank. Appreciate you having me on.
Fantastic. To start out with, I'd like you to just provide to everybody an introduction of yourself.
Yeah, so Ritch Wheeler. My wife Laura and I moved into Montgomery County in 2009 when we got married. We have 3 children, 3 under the age of 12. Well, wow. 12, 11, and 5. Had a 16-year corporate career up in the Woodlands area for a company that got bought out. Spent the next 2 years working for the company that bought the company that I worked for out, and then decided that I did not want to work for that company anymore. So then she and I launched, after my non-compete was up, she and I launched our own smaller sort of boutique version of that company. So we own our own company.
Okay. Over
that time period, like everybody else, kind of organically got involved in public service. One thing led to another. We actually moved into the city of Shenandoah in 2010. So moved in 2010, and right away, hadn't lived there very long. Mm-hmm. And it might have actually been the second day that we lived there. Got a knock on the door, and it was the ex-mayor's wife, and she was handing me a newsletter. And I thought, this is the coolest thing ever. You got the mayor's wife bringing you a welcome to the neighborhood packet and a newsletter. Nice. And so I said, man, this is just the neatest thing. And she said, yeah, unfortunately, it's the last one. I said, what do you mean it's the last one? She said, well, the lady who's doing this is moving, and so we won't have a newsletter anymore. Well, my wife and I just happened to do the newsletter for the company that we worked for that I was just talking about. And so I said, well, we could do that. We could do the newsletter, and that way the community can still have one. Well, that put me on the Civic Club. Within about a year, I was co-chairman of the Civic Club. You know how this deal works.
Yeah.
You've talked to enough people.
That's it.
Wasn't long before the mayor at the time was asking me to serve on Planning and Zoning Board.
Okay.
So I did that for 3 years. And then, like most people involved in politics, sort of a string of events happens that you just decide, I don't like the way that's going. Mm-hmm. And next thing I know, I was running for mayor, and then served as mayor for the city of Shenandoah 3 terms.
Okay.
6 years total.
Wow.
And from 2016 to 2022. And then you had John Escato on here previously. I had appointed John to Planning and Zoning Board while I was mayor. While he was on Planning and Zoning, I talked him into running for city council.
John's a good guy. I like him.
He is a good guy. And then, once he was on city council, it all just kind of came together at the same time. We were stepping away from the other company that I was telling you about. We were going to focus on launching our own company. Mm-hmm. John was just a great candidate to be mayor. I believe in term limits, even if they're self-imposed. And so I said, hey, man, if I don't refile, would you be willing to file to run for mayor? Mm-hmm. And he said yes. And so we prayed about it. We thought about it. And we decided now is the right time for us to take a step back, and we'll assess the battlefield and see where the fight's needed next. We sat out for a little bit, and then we said, okay, this is the one we're getting back into. And so that's what brought us here to the County Commissioner Precinct 3 race.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good journey, too.
Well, that's politics for you, right? So it's almost always organic. It's never just one thing. It's usually a string of events.
That's good, though. You've been led that way for a reason, I guess.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So what business were you in exactly?
So the name of the company was American Financial and Automotive Services, mm-hmm. and it was a very niche company. So we had car dealers as our clients.
Okay.
Essentially, you go in to go buy a car, and they take you back to the finance office, and they have all those different products back there, insurances and warranties you can buy.
Right.
Well, way back in the days long ago, the manufacturers used to sell those, and so it was actually my father-in-law was one of the founders of starting this industry, and he realized, he thought, you know what, if the manufacturers are the ones making all the money off of this, why don't we figure out a way that the dealers can also have some of that profit?
Sure.
So long story short, that's what he did. He set up a company where the dealers would sell their own insurance and warranties.
Okay.
The company would take those funds, administer the funds, invest them while they're administering and pay claims. So when there's an accident or when there's a claim or something of that nature, and then whatever was left over, the dealer would get back in the form of a profit. And so it's kind of a niche business. Not a lot of people out there even know it exists, but it really teaches you a lot. Teaches you how to serve other people, because you're constantly trying to help somebody else get better at their job. It also teaches you how to deal with very high-powered, high type A personalities. I mean, car dealers, let's face it, they are literally self-made millionaires.
Yeah.
And they are all type A's.
Yeah.
And
I know a couple.
And so they're great guys and gals, but they are definitely a unique brand of people to deal with.
Sure.
So kind of teaches you how to deal with politicians, I guess.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I worked for a company called Universal Computer Services.
Okay.
And they did all the computer data for all the dealerships in the country. I'd say 90%.
And I think they got bought out by Reynolds and Reynolds.
Sure did.
Yes.
My brother-in-law's still there.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a great company to work for.
And listen, Reynolds and Reynolds they're a behemoth. They're literally they're one of the biggest in the industry.
Yeah, and I was there when they were just,
that's
Bob
cool.
Brockman and UCS.
Yeah, UCS, yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
I haven't heard that in a while.
Yeah.
I haven't heard UCS in a while.
Okay, so let's move forward a little bit. So what would be your policy priorities when you get elected? Do you have any policy priorities, that areas where you see that things just aren't working right now and you want to make them work?
Yeah, so again, right, with anytime you have politics, it's multifaceted, right? So there's a couple of big bullet points. Number one, I really look at the east side of the precinct. That east side of I-45. And we take our kids. I told you I have 12, 11, and 5-year-old.
Tough job.
Boys involved in sports, right?
There you go.
We venture over into that area a lot for sports. And it just has really been neglected. It's not nearly as organized or developed as what the west side of I-45 is. And so there's a lot of need over there. There's a lot of need for infrastructure. There's a lot of need for to reduce congestion and traffic, among other things. So one of those things is okay. Let's see how we can pay as much attention to the east side of the precinct as we do the west side of the precinct, and that's just a minor one. And then while we're doing that, one of the other things that I can't stand is oftentimes when people think of, especially even in this position, county commissioner, precinct 3 or whatever, it's, well, what does a commissioner do? Well, commissioner roads and bridges, yada yada yada. So I'm not a big fan of the not my job mentality, right? So if we have a way that we can bundle things and make multiple areas better, then let's look at doing that. So if we're building roads and bridges, if we're creating and maintaining infrastructure, how can we do those in a way that can also address things like flood mitigation, right?
But it sounds like what you're trying to do is work with the other commissioners to make all of Montgomery County better.
I think you have to. So one of the things that that we were very proud of when we were at Shenandoah, not just myself, but the whole team, right? Shenandoah was historically, it was kind of one of those isolationist type administrations.
Still seems that way a little bit.
Well, it's getting a lot better, I'll tell you.
A little bit.
There was a real attitude from the previous administrations that, well, we're just going to mind our own business here. Well, the problem is that traffic and crime and floodwaters don't know where city limit signs are.
That's right.
And so what we started doing was we started reaching out to the Woodlands, reaching out to Oak Ridge North, getting to know the county commissioners, getting to know City of Conroe, working with Mayor Chakowski and Mayor Powell before that, the county judges. So it was really trying to understand that we kind of have to all work together in this area, in all of Montgomery County, if we're all going to get better. And we'll touch on. I want to talk about Tamina here in just a little bit, but that was one of the mindsets behind investing in the community of Tamina is if you can help the other areas around you be better, it helps you be better, right? If you're taking an isolationist mentality of we're only going to focus on right here, what's in our boundaries, and there are things going on around you that aren't good, eventually, sooner or later, it's going to catch up to you, right?
I have said that on this channel over and it's so nice to hear it coming from a different voice.
Well, I appreciate that. So a big part of it is working with the other county commissioners, working with the county judge, but not just county commissioners and county judges, state reps, local mayors, local city councils. Even MUDs. I mean, there's HOAs and POAs, right? Because in a lot of those areas, you have unincorporated areas of Montgomery County that really, your HOAs and your POAs are almost sort of stepping in and filling in that role of government. So it's just, you know what it is? It's let's just call it collaboration, right? An open door policy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Be accessible and collaborate with people.
Yeah, we need that, definitely. All of Montgomery County
All of Montgomery County needs that.
Yeah,
I think Precinct 3
sure.
desperately needs it.
Okay. Well, that's all sounds really good. Okay, so what would you say makes you completely different than the existing Precinct 3 commissioner?
So I'll focus on two areas of that. The first area is this. Like I said before, I believe in term limits strongly. The existing Precinct 3 county commissioner has been in that role for 12 years, or by the time that this term is up,
Right.
12 years. If he got reelected, it would be 16 years total. That's twice the maximum term of a U.S. president. It's too long. That's not representative government. That's not what our founding fathers wanted for this country. What you start to have in that situation is you have a ruling class, right? You have an entitled career politician.
Right.
And you start to see the effects of that, right? And so what the founding fathers desperately wanted, we didn't even have term limits in the presidency, by the way, until 1950, the 22nd Amendment.
Yeah, it's relatively recent.
Yeah, but everybody up until FDR, I guess, willingly stepped out of office after about 2 terms, because you need fresh ideas. You need fresh representation. You need we the people, by the people, for the
even
people.
Redirection.
Yes, 100%. It's that commercial that where the neighbor's looking at the guy, and he says, "I think you're in a rut." He says, "No, I'm in a groove." He's mowing or whatever.
Yeah.
He says, "No, I think you're in a rut."
Yeah.
You need a fresh perspective every now and then, right? And so I'm a big firm believer in term limits, and I think it is time for a change. However, having said that, I don't think there's anything wrong with coming in with a foundation, right? So I'm also a big believer of you serve in a particular capacity for a little while, and then hopefully if you're doing things the right way and you want to continue serve, then you go say, okay, what's the next position for me to go serve in? Well, so the good thing about the way I walk in the door is I don't walk in as a blank slate. I mean, I come in, I've got those experience years that I was talking about prior, municipal development district. I served, 4 years as the president on our MDD board. The P&Z board that I talked about that I was on for 3 years. Obviously the 6 years as mayor, dealing with Chamber of Commerce's, economic development committees, dealing with infrastructure issues and flood mitigation and traffic mitigation and other elected officials and other municipalities. So I don't come in completely blind like what a lot of candidates, and I would argue even the current commissioner came in as a candidate, of you're walking in the door and you really are drinking from a fire hose because you have no idea the way any of this works. I'll still be drinking from a fire hose. I'll just know how to take my sips a little more efficiently. So I come in with some foundational knowledge that will help me, some leadership skills from my corporate career. I was national vice president over the entire country for my particular role. I come in with some leadership skills from the military, the time that I served in the Navy, and then I come in with a sort of a foundational view from a municipal standpoint that all of that should be able to help me walk in the door and be a little more prepared than the average bear winning an election for the first time.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds like it. I think that's great. Yeah. And you and I align almost perfectly on a lot of ideas. So that's unusual to hear. I just don't get that often. I'm almost flabbergasted. So
Sounds like I need to do these more often.
Yeah, that covers experience and leadership for sure. All right, let's talk a little bit about infrastructure and development.
Okay.
I really don't want to stay too long with this, but I would like to touch upon it. You had mentioned that you thought the east side needed a little bit more in infrastructure and development than the west. Why do you think the reason is that condition even exists?
Well, look, let's start with the fact that the Woodlands is the rhino in the room, right? I mean, that's obviously that's the we used to go through this even when we were in Shenandoah. There are a lot of businesses in Shenandoah that want to call themselves the Woodlands. You know, you have I won't name names, but there are a lot of businesses that are located in Shenandoah, but yet they'll call themselves, you know, XYZ of the Woodlands. Because the Woodlands is the brand, right? That's the name.
Sure.
And so it gets a lot of attention.
And they've done well creating a brand.
And they have. And look, I live in the Woodlands now, so that's great. But it shouldn't get all the attention, right? I mean, I understand that it's going to get a lot of the attention just from the brand aspect of it. And I realize that a lot of probably the revenue dollars come out of the Woodlands. But that doesn't mean that they get all the attention or that they should even get an unfair percentage of the attention. And I think people in the Woodlands would tell you that. I think people in the Woodlands would tell you, again, that same mentality of, hey, we want everybody around us to be doing just as well as we are, because if we're all doing well together, it makes all of this sustainable. If you have one area that's doing significantly better than another, then what could end up happening over time is that could end up bleeding over, right?
Right.
And so I think people in the Woodlands would tell you that, yeah, we absolutely want to see the east side doing just as well as we are.
Okay, fantastic.
At least I hope they do.
Yeah. And, you know, you touched a little bit on flood mitigation. So what do you think the root cause of flooding is in that part of Montgomery County in Precinct 3? If you could fundamentally nail it to a single purpose, what do you think that single purpose would be?
Well, it's never going to be a single purpose for starters.
I agree with that. But I think that one would take a little bit higher
you know,
cause than the other.
It's trying to find that balance point of where we live, just geographically. I mean, geographically where we live, just this whole greater Houston area. It's real flat, it's real close to the coast, and a lot of water's draining our direction, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then on top of that, it's developing at a rapid pace. So we're pouring a lot of concrete. We're building a lot of impervious surfaces, and so that water doesn't have anywhere to go. And so what we're going to have to do is, if we're going to continue growing at the rate we're growing, and we are going to be in the geographic area that we're in, then we have to get ahead of that curve. And so I think it's a combination of those two things. It's not just, you know, a lot of people talk about development. Well, there's a lot of places around the country that could sustain any amount of development and growth you gave it. We are impacted partially by just the geographic condition of where we are. And that's nobody's fault. That's where we are.
Right. I like it. Okay. Good. All right. Public safety. So I'm not really sure about any public safety concerns in Precinct 3, but what are your concerns for public safety in Precinct 3?
I think we have a lot of public safety concerns in Precinct 3.
Talking about crime, or are we talking about traffic
I'm absolutely
concerns,
talking about crime.
Okay.
So it's statistically, it doesn't take much to look at it. And again, probably not anybody's fault, but crime is slowly creeping north, right? I mean, it's coming up I-45.
Well, that's because the numbers are growing.
It's exactly what it is, right? Your numbers are growing.
Right.
So as the numbers grow, then that that epicenter of Houston, if you will, is going to continue to radiate out, and it's just radiating further north. And so when we were in the city of Shenandoah, we saw that along that I-45 corridor, there was a need to get ahead of that growth rate for crime, right? You know, Shenandoah it's less than 5,000 people. I don't know what the exact number is now, but
Right.
at one time I think it was about 3,500, 4,000 people when we were looking at our police force. And we were continually adding police officers to the police force. And so the state of Texas says that you need one police officer per 1,000 residents per capita,
one per
basically.
Yeah.
So that would tell you that Shenandoah needs probably somewhere between 3 to 5 police officers. I think my last count in 2022, when I was in office, I think we had 28 people in the police department. So,
Yeah, that's a lot.
because you have a lot of people traveling up and down I-45, 400,000 people a day, I think was the last number I saw, and those criminals are going to dump off on either side of
They're
I-45.
stopping at gas stations, or stopping
Yes.
at restaurants, or stopping at
retail facilities.
Absolutely.
And they're crimes of opportunity, right? Let me get off. Let me hit a car. Let me hit an innocent bystander victim as quick as I can. Get back on the interstate and
keep going.
north or south, one or the other, right? Just get out of here. And so I would say that Precinct 3, again, we talked just a minute ago about that east and west side. Well, we're talking about the east and west side of what? I-45. And so, so Precinct 3 straddles I-45 just on a larger scale than what Shenandoah did. And so now you throw in there 99. You know, 99 comes across the bottom side and on both sides, the east and the west.
Right.
And so we just have a lot of opportunity for crime to continue to radiate north towards us. And again, if we don't get ahead of that, then we're going to look up and we're going to find ourselves in a bad situation.
And so what are your ideas for mitigating that?
So as a county commissioner, you say, well, wait a minute, county commissioners at roads and bridges. Well, okay.
There's more to it than that.
There's a lot more to it than
Yeah.
that. And you vote on the budget. And within that budget, you have the sheriff's department, obviously, amongst other departments, constables. But it's taking a look at that revenue and how can we give. You don't want to waste money, right? We're not talking about frivolously spending money, but how can we give our law enforcement departments, the sheriff's departments and the constables departments, what they need to protect our residents. And so when budget time rolls around, that's pretty important.
Absolutely.
When they come to commissioner's court, when you have the sheriff comes to commissioner's court and says, I need something, then listen, they know what they're talking about. That's what they did for a living, right? I don't pretend to know law enforcement nearly as well as the sheriff. So if the sheriff comes to me and says, I need more personnel or I need more equipment, then the sheriff's going to get more personnel or sheriff's going to get more equipment if it's at all possible. Because again,
there are so many tentacles to the sheriff's department.
Yes.
And they're looking at a $113 million annual budget. And we're talking about a 1,253 bed jail, which is like a small city.
Which is what,
talking about 500 uniformed officers, another 600-700 ununiformed and individual staff. It's massive. It's massive.
It is massive, and that's because again, Montgomery County is one of the fastest growing counties in the country, and it's all radiating north from the 4th largest city in the country.
So predominantly, is Precinct 3's policing done by the sheriff's department, or is it a combination of the sheriff's department and the constable's office?
You have most of Precinct 3 is covered by constables Ryan Gable, but then you also have obviously the sheriff's department. So they work, and again, I don't try to get into which line item each person has to be responsible for, but I can tell you that if they come to us at Commissioner's Court and say we need this so that we can protect the residents, then our job is to figure out a way to make it work. Yeah,
I agree.
I'll say this too, that if I didn't say it already, I'm a firm believer that the very first job of government, first and foremost above everything else, is protect its residents. And that's not just the county commissioner, that's not the county, that's not the city. that's government in general, right? The primary purpose of government is to protect the residents, and then everything else comes secondary after that.
Right. And I agree with that, actually. All right. I'd like to get into community engagement a little bit. I feel very strongly, and I always have, and I've said it 1,000 times on this channel, that it's almost and next to impossible for the average voter guys like me, unless
You're
we
not the average,
take
by the way.
unless we take time to go to commissioner's court, which I do, and we take time to do the research, and we take time to look at budgets, and and most people don't have that kind of time.
Right.
What would you do as county commissioner to provide the regular guy public with more information than they're getting now? Do you have any ideas on what you could do to just make sure that they're better informed and understand more on, even what a county commissioner does?
So a couple different things. And I will tell you that we even struggled with this in Shenandoah, and we were continually coming up with new
tough.
ways.
Yeah.
It is tough because here's part of the problem is people have to want to be reached. That's the first thing, right? People have to want to be reached. And if you look
apathy, you got to get people to care.
If you look at voting percentages, right? If you look at the number of registered voters in the country versus the population, then you look at the number of people who actually vote versus registered voters. And especially as you trickle it on down, the further away from a presidential election you get, the smaller and smaller percentages you get.
Which is unusual because we can control what happens locally.
Yes, we can do
can't
much more
control
here.
what's
That's
going
right.
on. Yeah, so it's
I agree
backwards.
100%. So, but that doesn't mean that we give up.
Right.
So we continue to try to look for that avenue. One of the things we did in Shenandoah was we put all of our meetings on YouTube. We live streamed them on YouTube. You can go on YouTube right now. You can go watch any meeting you want. Now, Commissioner's Court does have a live stream, and there's a way that you can go back and go watch the meetings.
Right.
I would argue that we could disseminate those out in other channels. We don't have to just leave it in one spot. And we could do more than just YouTube. People can say what they want to about social media. There's no question social media has its pros and cons, and in some cases it's gotten out of control. But you can reach a lot of people through social media, and a lot of people are connected through social media. So there are ways to push information out through social media. There are ways to push out those meetings, whether they be live streamed or pre-recorded videos that they can go back and go watch again. There's Constant Contact that everybody knows about, but it's not just emails. You can also send out direct text through Constant Contact. So again, we had a system through the city of Shenandoah where we could use Constant Contact to push information out to folks. And so we need to do a better job in the county of pushing out information. And you can make it sort of bullet point style so that people can pick up quickly what they want and then move on. Because the big thing is if you try to overload people with information, it's exactly what it is, right? It's information overload, and they disconnect. They disengage.
Velocity and volume.
Yeah, exactly. But I think even more so than all of those, one of the things that we have to do a better job of is just making ourselves accessible, right? My phone number for anybody that wants to call me is 214-695-2567. That number is now going to be on Hank Vatt's think tank forever, right?
It sure is.
So after I win county commissioner for Precinct 3, anybody in Precinct 3 that wants to pick up the phone and call Ritch Wheeler is going to be able to. But I've never shied away from that. If you're going to be an elected official, then you should have a desire to want to serve people. And the only way you're going to be able to serve them is so they can get in touch with you. And so you have to be able to make yourself accessible to people. You have to be able to respond to emails. You have to be able to respond to a text message, a phone call. Have your office open where people can come visit you. You have to make yourself available to the people who you represent. Otherwise, what are you representing? You have no idea what they want.
Right.
You have no idea what that representation that you're walking into Commissioner's Court with, because you don't have a feel for the pulse of your community, and you don't have that feedback back and forth with your community. So I just think we need to do a better job in general of making ourselves more accessible and making ourselves having better collaboration with the residents that you represent.
Okay. I agree.
I think
100%.
I think town halls are a really good way to do that. By the way,
Yeah, town halls are great.
We-
Anything public where you can get
we started doing those in
face-to-face.
Shenandoah, and in fact, I think next week they have a town hall. We kind of started a tradition there, and they've kept it going, which I like.
I'll tell you, and I firmly believe if you want to raise voter turnout, that's the way to do it. As long as you're out front and you let people know what's going on, and you keep them interested, keep them involved, they're going to show up at the voting box, and they're going to make good decisions.
It goes back to if people feel like their voice matters.
Exactly. Yeah.
If they don't feel like their voice matters, then you're right, they disengage.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Okay, budget and finance. How do you feel about the budget for Precinct 3? Are you good with it? Are you a zero-based budget guy?
Yes, zero-based budget for sure.
Okay.
It's interesting because as the mayor for the city of Shenandoah, the budget's yours. You own the budget, and then the councils vote on it, right? So I spent a lot of time digging into the budget. I would go around and I'd meet with all the department heads, sit down with them, get them to explain to me, what is your budget? Why is this here? We would go line item, right? Item by item. And, hey, look, you got a lot of money here in, travel and training that we haven't used in the last 3 years. Are we just padding that, or are we really going to use it this year?
Right.
And so I tried to spend a lot of time digging in with the department heads so that by the time I got to those budget workshops with the council, then we could have good conversations about it. But at the end of the day, Shenandoah's got about an $11 million budget. And again, that belonged to the mayor. The council would vote on it. Well, walking into Precinct 3, Precinct 3's got about a $9 million budget for Precinct 3.
Okay.
I'm going to have a fact checker out there that's going to tell me I'm wrong on that. But
it'll be 8.9.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
ought to be ashamed of yourself.
It's approximately $9 million.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the good news is, again, while I don't have the 12 years or 16 years of sitting in that chair, I walk in with the ability of, okay, I've handled a budget this size before. There are going to be some nuances that are different. There's going to be some areas that are going to be county related as opposed to city related, but it's not going to be overwhelming. And so I should be able to take that same process of going to those departments and saying, okay, hey, let's talk about your budget. Why is this what it is? Have we used it historically? Are we just padding the budget so that at the end of the year we can move that money somewhere else?
Right.
And by the way, I keep bringing up travel and training because I'm a huge fan of training for our staff members. I pushed training for the staff there at the city, and it's something that I think the entire county needs to continue to do a good job of. Is train your people. You train your people, you have better retention and you have better production. And I carry that over from my corporate career again as just sort of a real important thing to do.
Okay. Any final remarks? Any closing statement you'd like to make? A plea for vote for me.
No, just exactly that is get out and vote. That's the first and most important thing is actually get out and vote. But I do think that I'm a very good candidate for the county commissioner of Precinct 3. I think that I walk in the door with some foundational knowledge and experience that the average bear probably wouldn't have if they decided they wanted to run for county commissioner. And yet we're still respecting the model that our country was built on, which is representative government. And that is you come in, you sit in the seat for a little while, you do the job, and then your rotation is done and you move on and you let somebody else rotate in. And we have fresh ideas and fresh ways of seeing things, fresh thought processes, and that keeps our representative government system in check, and it keeps us from having a ruling class and the haves and the have-nots. And it definitely keeps us from having those career entitled politicians that feel like they know what they're doing and they don't have to listen to anybody anymore.
There you go.
So, for all of those reasons, Ritch Wheeler is the right guy to vote for.
There you go. Well, Ritch, I appreciate you coming in today. And this has been a good conversation.
I appreciate you having me. And look, let's do this again after March.
Do you have any additional speaking engagements between now and early voting?
So I've got a bunch of them, actually.
Okay.
Too many to list right here. But you can go on wheelerfortexas.com.
Okay.
That's my website. I'll touch on that in just a minute, why it's not Precinct 3 County Commissioner.
Okay.
So WheelerForTexas.com. On there's a link to my Facebook page. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's a Facebook little icon. Click on that Facebook page, and I post almost everything I go to on there. And
Great.
I posted it far enough in advance where people will know. When I was stepping out of office for Shenandoah, my staff was really, they were pushing me. They said, you got to do something else. We really want you to stay in public service. And I said, don't worry, I will. I just don't know what it is yet. Well, one of the staff members thought that I was maybe just using that as an excuse. So they pushed me basically to, before I stepped away, to getting the domain WheelerForTexas.com.
Perfect.
So that when I did decide to step back into public service, I already had a website. And so when I decided that I was going to do this, I thought, you know what, I have to use that website. They believed in me that much that it just felt right to use WheelerForTexas.com. So that's where you can find me, folks. It does sound good. And I'm a history major by trade and love Texas history, so it just fit.
Great, fantastic.
Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No problem. It was good. All right, guys, there you have it. And as I've said before, you got to be intelligent voters. So do some research, find out what's important to you, find out what matters to you in Precinct 3, make intelligent choices at the voting box. By doing so, we can do exactly what Mr. Wheeler said we can do, and we can create a better environment for us all to live, work, and play in. I'm Hank Batt. This is Hank's Think Tank, and we're gone till the next one.